Before we get into some of the more difficult examples that we're going to use when we're learning how to do DevOps and scripting and automation and all those kinds of things, I wanted to be able to make sure that we did a tutorial on how to use GitHub, how to sync up your local Git repositories with github.com. GitHub.com and some of its other sites like Bitbucket or Azure DevOps or GitLab. There are many of them. They are internet hosted Git repositories. And each one of these sites allows you to clone repositories that are publicly available. But also, if you've got your own account, you can push code back up to those repositories as well. So you can have a third-party backup of all of your change against your source code and all of that kind of stuff. So what I wanted to do show you was how to, as a demonstration of what the difference between Git and GitHub is. I'm only going to do the GitHub example because that's the kind of the most popular one. If anybody wants me to do one of the others, then let me know in the comments below, and I'll show you how that might work on a different system. But let's first go and have a quick look at GitHub. So I'll open up my browser. I'm gonna not now. And my repositories are at this URL. I've got a load of repositories. Let's quickly walk through the user interface. So this is github.com. I can sign up for my own account, so I can store my own repos if I want to. I can sign in because I've got my own account. This shows you I've got 113 repositories. Some are private, some are public. The ones that I kind of think might be useful for other people, I make public. So you, in a public repo, all of my code can be cloned, and you can do what you want. There might be licenses involved, so always check your license before you're changing the code, because you might have to feed that back into as part of the open source process. But mine are all you can edit your code as much as you like. They're just examples. Here we've got this graph that shows you how active you've been against all of your repositories over the year. So the lighter the green, the more I've been doing commits. So you can see I go through phases of doing commits and not doing commits. But I can go back in time to any time in the last 13 years to repos that I created many years ago. So in this particular example, first thing that we're going to do, let's click on repositories. We're going to go to, I uploaded the Python Hello World repository that we created in the last video into Python Hello World. So if we click on that repository, we can see in the user interface, the interesting parts are so GitHub is automatically showing the README. So all of the instructions that we wrote down for how to run this Python application. It's also got the source code, so you can click on the source code and you can see what's going on there. You can even make edits in the user interface if you're signed in. We go back. We can see things that we're going to discuss in later videos in a bit more depth are things like the branch details that you're on. Remember in the Git tutorial we mentioned that we sit on the main branch, but we can do feature development on different branches and then merge them later. It's going to be a much deeper tutorial on that soon, but for now we're just worried about cloning and maybe doing a simple push back up to GitHub. Pull requests are again to do with merging code. Actions are about setting off automations based on Git commits, which is really useful. But the kind of the really interesting bit that I want to show you today is where we do a Git clone. So that's gone a bit weird. That's better. So what we do is this green button here. This shows you the different ways that you could download the source code of this repository. So you can see here that I've got a URL, which I'm going to copy, but I can also download the repo as a zip file, or I can connect it up to GitHub Desktop, which is kind of like a a desktop application which can manage GitHub. There's also this GitHub CLI, which is different to the Git command line. This GitHub CLI integrates with GitHub more and gives you more features that are closely tied with GitHub. But I'm just using the stock Git. Okay, so first things first, on this HTTPS link, we're going to copy this URL, and then we're going to open up a terminal. As usual, I'm going to go into my source subfolder that we created right at the beginning of this series to keep all my source code together. And we're going to do a git clone. So if a repo is public, git clone should work and just pull down the latest source code with all of the associated changes with it. If you remember, one of the more interesting commands is if we do git log -1 line, we can see the history. Oh, no, we're not in the right folder yet. That's that. So let's go into the right folder. And then we do a git log 1 line. That shows you all of the commits that have been down, that are there as part of this repository. Okay, so we've now got all of the history of that repository, of all of that source code on my machine here. So that's great, that's cool. And we can prove that this works if we did the Python tutorial to install Python. I can run the server, and if I press Control and click, then it should open a browser and we can see Python source code. So that's awesome. Okay, let's close that down. So what we want to do now is we want to demonstrate the syncing back up to GitHub. Now, at the moment, I'm not signed in against GitHub in my Git client or in the browser. So I'm going to show you the authentication mechanism. We're going to do some changes first. So let's do some minor changes. So we'll open up our Visual Studio Code. And then it's already opening up to my Python Hello World app. Let's make a couple of tiny changes in here. Demo to show sync to GitHub. There we go. This should change. Okay. So Visual Studio Code here has registered that we've modified those two files, so they've gone orange. Let's go back to our terminal. Go back to our terminal window. As part of my Git workflow, I usually start off with a Git status. It shows you here I've got 2 commits that are red. So we have 2 commits that are red, which means we need to stage them. So let's stage them with a git add. Git dot means stage all changes to all files in the current folder. We do a git status again, we should see the red change to green, so everything's staged. But now we have to do a commit, remember, to put all that together. Remember, the message can be anything. I've got into the habit of doing conventional commits. So if you search conventional commits on GitHub, you'll see what each of those 4-letter words mean. So this feat for feature, changes for demo. So when I do git commit, that means that my Git history on my local machine is now, no, not 1 line, 1 line. So there you can see I've got a change here, and but this is currently, we can't see this in GitHub. So if I refresh the page, I can see we committed yesterday, so GitHub isn't aware of the changes yet. So the way we make the changes is we do a git push. And if I'm not authenticated against GitHub yet, then an authentication process will start. So I'm going to do a git push because I want to start the syncing process. And I'm going to sign in with a browser. So this will pop up with some details. And it's already signed me in. In this window, I would have seen a username and password box, but obviously it's cached some credentials because I did this earlier. So this browser window's popped open and said, oh yeah, I remember you, and therefore set up all the credentials for us. So that's kind of cool. But it would have popped up with a username and log on box. Okay, so now if we click refresh, the 6 has changed to 7 now, so that's cool. And we can go into the commits and we can see what changes we made. So if we go into this latest commit, you can see where there's a red line, it's removed something, where there's a green line, it's added something, and it's kind of showing you the changes that you've made to each of the 2 files as part of this commit. So that's pretty cool too. Okay, I guess the one last thing I want to show is how do I create a repository in GitHub and then sync it up to something that I've written on my desktop. So first we'll create so you can do this one of 2 ways. You can either create the repo in GitHub first, then clone it to your machine in the way that we've just showed you, or you can initialize a repository on your machine and push it up to GitHub. So we'll do both, shall we? So we'll go, if I sign in fact, yes, I'll sign in. Do one of those. Okay. Let's just go in here. So now we can see. Here we can see it's now we can see the repositories has gone up from 113 to 160 because I've got a load of private repos. And what we're going to do is we're going to start a new repo. So we're going to go add new repository and we'll just call it test1. We can fill in all of these details. It can pre-populate the repo if you want. And then we can, with ignore files and readmes and licenses and things like that, you can go create repo. And then if you want to immediately clone that repo, we can go to the HTTPS link or the SSH link. I'm going to do HTTPS because that's the thing that's probably most people will do on a Windows machine. Copy and paste that. We'll go out to our source directory and we'll just do a git clone like that. And then I can go straight into that that folder. And then let's send some details into a new text file. So we should be able to see a new text file. Okay, and if we do a git status, because it's already a git repo and we don't need to do that git init because we've cloned one from online, you can see that there's a new file. Stage it, commit it, new file, and push. Okay, and then if we just click on refresh here, there you can see the new .txt file has been created. Cool. Now the other quick demonstration is, or what happens if in my test file, so I make a repo on my machine first, I do a git init. So now it's a Git repo on my machine, but doesn't exist at GitHub. And I want to, let's do echo doodads are cool and stick that into a text file called cool.txt. Okay, so again, let's have a look at the status of our repo. Cool.txt isn't staged, so let's stage it. Push it, commit it. Feat new cool.txt file. Now, if I were to do a git push here, it's not configured. So we need to do something extra. So if you want to link a local repo to a new github.com repo, so we still have to create a new repo here. So we'll create a new one, new repository. Doesn't have to be the same name, but I'm going to call it the same name just to make sure I don't get confused. Leave all of the other fields empty. And if we click create repo, because it'll give you some merge conflicts and weirdness, which would overcomplicate things. But here it shows you the instructions of how to push an existing repository from the command line. So if I cut and paste these commands into my window, there you can see that Git is now pushing to that new repo online. So if I now refresh that, I should have a cool.txt with doodads are cool inside it. Okay, if you found that useful, like and subscribe because it helps get the visibility of my videos out there, and stick any comments in the text below in case you find anything interesting. Okay, see you later.